This is the Spurscast with your host, Paul Garcia.
And welcome back to another episode of the Spurscast. On today's episode, I will be speaking with Project Spurs Director of Digital Content, Joe Garcia. In this episode, Joe and I will discuss the Spurs finally ending their 16-game losing streak, Devin Vassell getting ready to return to the team soon, and Blake Wesley's defense so far in his early games as a rookie in this season. Let's go ahead and jump right into this episode with Joe. Joe, how you doing?
Doing good. I'm just happy the Spurs finally got their win after 16 games, so it's celebration. We should go down Commerce and honk the horns and everything,
Man, it was wild. Just like, when I noticed that I just noticed that at halftime, the Jazz were having trouble with scoring in the paint against the Spurs' defense. They were just really shooting really terribly. And then I noticed that it carried on to the second half. And I was like, oh my, wow, the Jazz cannot do anything in the half court against this defense. And they might actually pull this out. And sure enough, like we'll get into it here. But yeah, they pulled it out, Joe. They finally ended that losing streak. So Spurscast, let's first dive into what happened since the last Spurscast episode. If you all listened to the last episode, you all know that Joe was my last guest. And so he and I just spoke a few days ago. And at that time, they had just returned from the All-Star break with the loss against Dallas. So Joe, they went 1-1 in these last two games. Both games in Utah. So let's go back to Saturday evening. The Spurs are at Utah. They lose by 16 in this one. They actually led for most of this game. For the first half, they led by about 10 points on average. Then Utah took a lead midway through the third quarter, and then it basically ballooned to the fourth quarter. Utah took complete control. The top three Spurs in this game were Keita Bates-Diop, Jeremy Sohan, and Keldon Johnson. Then the losing streak finally ends on Tuesday. The Spurs are still in Utah. They win this game by 8 points. It was a close game pretty much throughout. I know that the Spurs fell behind by 10 at one point, and then they also led by 9. But again, it wasn't like any team got too far away from each other. And the Spurs really did a great job in crunch time. They pulled away those final 3 minutes is when they were able to find answers. And like I said earlier, they were able to get stops against Utah. Keldon Johnson came up big for the Spurs in the fourth quarter and in this game overall. He ends up in the fourth quarter alone shooting 4-6 for the team in the fourth quarter for 9 points. Your top three Spurs on this night were Keldon Johnson, 25 points, 4 rebounds, and 3 assists. Jeremy Sohan, 13 points, 6 rebounds, and 6 assists. And then using my model that I have, a box score model that I created, Blake Wesley for the first time made the top three for the Spurs in this night with 9 points, 6 rebounds, and 3 steals off the bench. So the Spurs should have gone 0-2. Instead, they went 1-1. Like I said, they ended this losing streak. Joe, what were your thoughts on this win for the Spurs against Utah?
Well, we forgot to mention the one big stat, and that is that the Spurs finally won one game after not winning any games when they're trailing by 10 points. They went 44 games, I believe.
Yes, 0-44.
0-44 when trailing by 10 points. And finally, the 45th game, they were trailing by double digits, and they found a way to win. And I'm not saying that, Spurs fans need to get worried that the Spurs are going to start stringing together some wins. But the solace that you can take, the silver lining in this whole thing is that they're playing a little bit better now. Over the course of the last couple of games, they've started to put some things together, and it appears that they're starting to finally play a little bit more consistent defense. And I think one of the things that I saw too, I forgot who I saw it from. I believe I saw it on your Twitter line here, is that the Spurs play a little bit better defensively when you have one, Keita Bates-Diop and Jeremy Sohan on the court together. I know Spurs fans feel a certain way about Keita Bates-Diop. You either hate him or you love him. But when he's on the court with Jeremy Sohan, it seems like the team does play a little bit better from a defensive end. So that's a trend that, maybe Spurs fans could kind of look at now. Has the team kind of turned that corner? They're going to be a little bit more consistent now on the defensive front. Doesn't mean that it'll translate into wins, but it just means that maybe they're starting to finally figure some stuff out.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with you there. And just the fact that they're both very versatile defenders who can guard a lot of different positions. They don't have to play one specific position, or Bates-Diop and Sohan. So I definitely agree with you there. And then just another thing, it's just like their defense is the reason why they got this win. I know it hasn't happened often. It's very rare, but they're a perfect 4-0 when they hold the opponent under 100 points. So again, when they have a really good defensive night, doesn't happen a lot this year. They actually are, perfect. They're 4-0. And and it was wild because like you said about the losing streak ending where they were down by double digits. That's one thing that I like to track, and I know that people like to tweet at me whenever I put up that stat. Like Ty Yeager does that a lot. He actually created a meme for me where like it's like an old Simpsons meme and it has my name in it anyway. Whenever they fall behind by 10 games, by 10 points, and so after they got the win, Mark Finger, who's a columnist for the San Antonio Express News, he tweeted me. He's like, "So what are you gonna do now, Paul?" And so I'm like, "Well, I got to watch that 50-point deficit streak. That they're like 0-33 on that one. So that'll be the new thing that I'm kind of keeping tabs on." All right, so Joe, let's go through the team how they're doing now overall. So they're 15-47 now, still 14th out west. I mean, Rockets, again, continuing to be the worst team out there in the NBA. The 16-game losing streak finally ends. That was a franchise record. They finally got a win on the Rodeo Road Trip. They didn't go winless. They're now 1-8. They finished the Rodeo Road Trip 1-8. But the Spurs, by winning this game, they actually, I don't want to say decrease the lottery odds because they still have a 14% chance at number one, but their worst case scenario lottery odds did get a little bit worse. So they now have the third worst record because now Detroit snuck in there for the second worst record. And what that means is, yes, San Antonio still has a 14% chance at number one, just like Detroit, just like Houston. But the worst case scenario gets worse for them if they finish third, because now they can fall all the way to seventh. Before they could fall all the way to sixth pick. Now it's at the seventh pick. And Joe, you had a great idea before this, and so we're going to go and do this now. Live on here. So what I usually say is, I talk about how many chances it took me for the Spurs to get the number one pick using Tankathon's draft simulator, but we're going to do this live here, Joe. So I'm going to go ahead and share this on the screen. So those of you that are watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see this, but if not, you can hear this on audio. So Joe and I just pulled up the Tankathon simulator. Again, the Spurs have the third worst, or they have a 40% chance out there. We're going to go ahead and see how many turns it takes them to get number one. Here's turn number one. Oh, we got on the first pick. First pick, San Antonio got it. So that's how it was last week. And even before you and I recorded, it took me 2 times. But yes, so again, that was really good luck right there. They actually got it on the first try, Joe. So you had told me that earlier today you tried it and it wasn't working for you, right? Or
yeah, like earlier I tried and I was like, okay, let me see if they're going to go ahead and get it like the first time, second time, third time. I was not lying. I did like 9 or 10 tries before they finally got number one. And at some point, the number one overall pick went to the Charlotte Hornets, and then it went to the Washington Wizards. I'm like, really?
Oh, wow.
That didn't even seem like it was realistic, So, hey, at least this time it bodes well for us because it looks like the Spurs are going to be in the mix there. It was first try, so good sign.
Yeah. That's a good sign right there. You're right. Just exactly right. So again, we'll kind of see what happens with the Spurs. Obviously, again, if they do start playing better and winning games, well, then we're going to see them. And now Charlotte's a team to watch because they do have the fourth worst record, but they just lost LaMelo Ball for the rest of the season, and so they can start to go on a losing streak. So there's going to be some competition there for who's going to finish in the bottom.
Did you
four.
see the video on his injury?
That was ugly because it was like a non-contact. That's always that's always scary. Yeah, whenever there's a non-contact.
He just came down on his foot, and you just see him wince, and he just fell back, and you hate to see somebody go out like that, man. It was just one of those things that happened. It was just a weird angle or something, and he fractured his ankle. So I'm like, ouch.
Yeah, those are always those are always very, very worrisome. I mean, worrisome, should I say?
Yeah.
All right, Joe, let's go and get into some injury news for the team. So there's some positive, but then also some negative for the Spurs on the injury front. First of all, Devin Vassell, like we talked about last week, is projected to come back probably on Thursday. The Spurs, when they put out their injury report for Thursday's game against Indiana, they did list him as probable. So again, that's the first good sign that there's a very strong chance Devin Vassell comes back on Thursday at home against the Pacers. His last game, but if he comes back tomorrow on Thursday, it'll be a full 2 months since he last played an NBA game because it'll be March 2nd, and his last game was on January 2nd. But unfortunately for the Spurs, they did get some more injury news. Malachi Branham, if you watched that last game, he left the game early against Utah on Tuesday, and so they listed him as a questionable for Thursday's game with a lower back contusion. Trey Jones is still kind of there on the injury report where he's questionable with left foot soreness. He hasn't been able to shake that left foot soreness even after the All-Star. We're getting all those days off. And then Keldon Johnson, if you watch the fourth quarter, I know he finished the game, but he did have a possession there where he kind of came up hobbling, but he finished out the game, and so now he's questionable with the left foot sprain. What are your thoughts, Joe, on this on the updated injury report for the Spurs?
Oh, it does not bode well. The Spurs went ahead and won a game against the Utah Jazz, and you're looking at the end of Indiana Pacers finally coming back to the AT&T Center, and the Indiana Pacers just defeated the Dallas Mavericks and they have 28 wins on the season, which is almost double what the San Antonio Spurs have. And now the Spurs are missing one of their best players. It doesn't look good. I mean, while you're hoping that the team will be competitive, it's realistically, you're looking at another loss. And I don't want to, burst the bubble for any Spurs fans here. But even if Devin Vassell does return to the lineup after missing quite some time with injury, he's going to look at a minutes restriction. So Pop is going to be very it's going to be very limiting because Pop is going to pull him fairly quickly. He's going to let him go in there, get his reps, sit him down because he doesn't want to risk further injury to him. Because let's face it, I mean, he just barely started 3-on-3 workouts and he was still saying that his knee was still sore. So he still has some work to do, but it's a good sign nonetheless.
I agree with you there. I think they're going to be very cautious with both Branham and also Keldon Johnson. Again, I don't think if they're not 100%, they're not going to play. I don't think on Thursday. And then even Trey Jones, yes, he's questionable, but even if they say yes to him and he can play, he's going to be like Vassell. I think they're both going to be on on a minutes restriction. So yeah, again, and even if Vassell plays, I don't see him either being able to go 100%, with his minutes because, like you said, they're going to have him on a minutes restriction. They're going to be very conservative with bringing him back, where I don't think he plays on back-to-backs and those kind of things. So again, we'll kind of see what happens. But if Trey Jones is out and if Malachi Branham are out, those are two of the Spurs' lead ball handlers right now. And so this is going to give some minutes to a young player who we've kind of seen start to get more minutes lately just because of the injury front of the team, and that is Blake Wesley, and that's who I want to talk about next for our next topic. And in his 18 games. So let's kind of do a quick dive into how he's playing, and more so for him, it's actually the opposite, where we're actually seeing more so his strengths are coming on the defensive end. So let's just look at how he's gone through his first 18 games here as a rookie. So he's offense hasn't been there for him. He's only scoring 4.7 points per game on 5 shot attempts, which taking more shots than points is obviously an inefficient number. 1.8 rebounds, 1.6 assists, 1.9 fouls per game, 0.6 steals, and 1.4 turnovers. However, when we really dive into the data on the defensive end, we do see some of his strengths here. So, and it also matches the eye test. So when we look at his per 36 numbers with steals, he's averaging 1.4 steals per 36 minutes, which is tied for second on the Spurs with Devin Vassell. Trey Jones leads that category with 1.6 per 36. Deflections, he stands out here per 36. 2.5 deflections per 36 minutes, which is second amongst the Spurs perimeter players. Defensive rebounding has also been a strength for him per 36 minutes, 3.9 per game, which is third among Spurs perimeter players. The only negatives I do see when I look at his data on defense is his contested shots are very low, and also he does foul a lot from when we look at some of his defensive numbers. I went back and watched some clips from him and just kind of some of my observations on him. He's really good about anticipation for steals and deflections. He's really good about anticipating those from the opponent. Also, something that I noticed that he's constantly moving. He has a lot of energy when he's out there on the floor. He uses those bursts of energy to go around picks. So when the big guy sets a pick on him, he likes to use a burst of energy to go around that pick, and then he gets a steal on the pick and roll ball handler on the weak side. He also pushes the break when he gets the ball defensively. And then something I noted just looking at cleaning the glasses numbers are that he definitely they code him as a combo guard playing a lot of 1 and 2. And they say that, according to their data, he definitely stands out in steal percentage and defensive rebound percentage amongst all combo guards in the NBA. But we do want to note that that's a small sample size because he has only played in 18 games. So, Joe, what have your thoughts been on Blake Wesley so far this season, what you've seen from him, but also the fact that he might start to get more minutes just because the Spurs are dealing with some injuries to lead ball handlers?
He's one of these rookies that really intrigued me, especially during the summer league. Spurs fans, that was going to be their first look at Blake Wesley and, kind of gauge what can he really do. And when he was in the summer league, he was playing really good basketball. That's one of the things that really stood out at me. Mm-hmm. And not only that, but his speed in the open court, his aggressiveness on both, not only the offense, but the defensive end, and his willingness just to go in there. He was fearless. Going up in the middle of the paint, going up against these bigger defenders. You loved everything about the kid. You liked his motor. He had a high motor, high energy, very willing to take instruction as well, because you could see him on the sidelines with the coaches and them really, talking to him and stuff. And he was just taking it in, listening, and then trying to apply what they told him out on the court. So you liked everything you saw out of the kid. Now that he's starting to get some real minutes here, because the Spurs just really don't have a choice. Coach Pop is left with no choice due to injury. It bodes well for the San Antonio Spurs and for their future, because these younger rookies or this younger core, that's exactly what they need to get better. Is they need that experience, and being thrown into the fire right in the middle of these NBA games and going up against some of the better talent that the NBA has to offer is only going to make them better. And in turn, making the younger core better is going to hopefully translate into more wins next season, if in fact the Spurs do wind up getting that high pick. So overall, it's a great trend for Spurs fans to really look at, because this is the only thing that you really got to look forward to. Let's be honest, Paul, in a losing season, it's about the development and the growth of the younger players. And, Blake Wesley is really shining out here. And the other person who shined in the month of February is also Malachi Branham.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, we talked about Malachi at length here on the Spurscast, and just one thing I'm really eager to see is like you look at his like right now I'm just looking at his shot profile, and obviously he's very raw on offense, and I think that's why he didn't get a lot of minutes early on. Is like the minute he makes a mistake, Coach Pop was probably taking him out, his decision making. But now that he's going to probably have to play, like you said, just because of the injuries that the team's dealing with these last 20 games, I am eager to see if like we see like now. If he ends up like something's just kind of pops for him, like we saw with Sohan, when Sohan first started back in October with the Spurs, he was very raw offensively. And now it seems like he's able to like get into games and do a little bit more, playmaking. I was noticing on his drives numbers, he's like third overall on the Spurs in drives. And we even saw for like in the third quarter against Utah, where Sohan was like running a lot of pick and roll. He was going one-on-one against players. The Spurs were going to him in the half court. And so I do wonder if we're going to see something change in Wesley, some growth there on the offensive end, as the season goes along, especially if he does continue to get minutes. I have noticed that Malachi's game has just been very like he's kind of just transitioned very well at the NBA level, like we saw with his 3-level scoring ability, and we've seen his numbers jump off the page here in February, like you mentioned there, Joe. So again, on the offensive end, I'm eager to see what happens with Blake. Again, I'm not saying it's going to work out for him in these last 20 games, but I just want to see what happens. By the time we check in 20 games from now, what does it look like by the end of the year for him on offense? And then on defense, I just want to see too. I noticed how he gets all these steals and things, but also is that part of the scheme, or is he just kind of just doing that on his own? And so, is he, when he makes some of those gambles of kind of going around the screen, like I said, is he putting his teammates at risk there of, on the defensive falling, collapsing? So I am also eager to see, is it more in the scheme of the team on defense for him, or is he kind of just going out on his own and being a little bit more independent out there?
Yeah, one of the things that I want to know about him is what is his turnover ratio? Because again, young player that really doesn't know a lot as far as the context of the game. What is his turnover ratio looking like? Because if he can keep that down, he's going to get more minutes, because Coach Pop likes it when you're out there doing your job and you're not turning over the ball a lot. So that's another thing to keep an eye on. But overall, you'd like everything you're seeing out of this young rookie. Very promising. I think his ceiling is pretty high.
Yeah, for sure. And I was actually, I'm assuming the turnover ratio right now it's not great, because I noticed like in all offensive stats when I was looking at cleaning the glass, it was all in blue, which is usually not. Yeah, he's in the one percentile, 19.8% turnover percentage for a combo guard, which is really not good. Yeah, not at all. So obviously, like I said, offense, he's got a long way to go. But like I said, just from now until the end of the year, does he make some growth in any kind of area? And that's what I am eager to see from him. And his 3-point shots actually been pretty good from when I look at the numbers. But again, it's a very small sample size. So I think that's the one thing to watch is like just continue to watch how Sohan grows, how Branham continues to develop when Vassell comes back. If what he's able to do with his teammates now, and then also Blake Wesley, kind of see what he turns into there. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of it here for this episode of the Spurscast. Like I said, it's only been 2 games since Joe and I last recorded. Thank you to Joe for joining me here on this episode of the Spurscast, and also for mixing and producing this episode. From all of us at Project Spurs, stay safe and have a great day.